You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Well, good evening. Welcome to the final edition of Inside GCT for the 44th season at Germantown Community Theatre. I am Michael Miles, the executive producer here, and we are doing this final edition about the play I Hate Hamlet. And we have our great director, John Maness, with us. John, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And so John is an old pro of Inside GCT. This is our second time together. So
second go around.
That's right. So we'll get it right this time.
All right.
Or wrong.
Or
whichever. So
we'll commit one way or the other.
That's right. Well, we'll find out in about 30 minutes.
That's right.
So what we're going to do over the next 30 minutes is just have a conversation about the show. Since this is our second time around, it will be very conversational, I'm sure. And we will talk about everything from the plot to the actors to any moments in rehearsal, things like that. So, John, as we dive in, why don't you tell us the dates of the production and a bit of the synopsis, if you would?
Well, we open on the 20th this month, and I believe we're still doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday
That's right.
Performances. The show itself is, I think of it like as a love letter to the theater, and it's this plot that's just so ridiculous and out there that there's an actor, he's a television actor named Andrew, and he has just gotten the role of Hamlet in the Shakespeare in the Park production of it. But he's not real sure if he wants to do it. His girlfriend is obsessed with Shakespeare and specifically Hamlet, and so he kind of does it for her. And when he moves back to New York, he's looking for an apartment, and the one that happens to come up is the apartment that John Barrymore once lived in. So as these things happen, the ghost of John Barrymore appears to teach him how to be Hamlet, and so we get a little bit of a schooling on how to perform Hamlet via the great John Barrymore, and much zaniness ensues.
All right. So this is a drama.
Yes, very serious, very dark.
Serious drama. Very serious. Can you tell us about your cast?
Yeah, I have a really great cast. The actor, Andrew, is played by Gabe Butel-Gunn. People have seen him around town doing all sorts of things. I think most recently he's in Hay Fever at Theatre Memphis. John Moore is playing Barrymore. Again, it's a lot of old hats from around town. And we've got some newcomers. Ashley Trevathan is playing Felicia. She's the agent who comes in to convince him to rent the apartment. And that's what's kind of really great about the show is there are no sort of boring parts. There are no characters who are sort of thrown away. And it's so beautifully written in that every line is just masterfully crafted. The comedy is really sharp and really tight, and one thing I think audiences would really get out of it is if you've ever watched a sitcom and you wondered what it would be like to be in the live studio audience, it'll be kind of like that, hopefully. No, it will be. So it's written like a very well done sitcom, and if you've ever wanted to experience that, yeah, please come out and see the show, because that's kind of the experience we're playing with regards to how we're approaching the piece.
If that's the feeling that you hope to put up here, how has rehearsal been? Is there a special technique that you take to get that feeling to come across?
Well, no. Everyone's sort of seen sitcoms, so they kind of, or at least think they know how they work. There's been a lot of being very specific about how a joke works. So we'll kind of workshop some things when we're working some of the funny bits, and sometimes we know why it's funny, or we know that it's funny, but we don't really know why it's funny. So we try it a couple of different ways, and usually it's so weird how in rehearsal you discover that sometimes it's as simple as you have to turn your head on this word instead of this one, and it makes all the difference in the world. Comedy is so hard, when you're trying to put it all together. But we've got a really great cast of people. They're all very, very funny, and these characters are just out there. And we've got some really great actors who have embodied them with a lot of flourish and flavor.
I love that you say that comedy is difficult. I think that oftentimes audiences think that it's got to be the fun, easy approach. Will you talk to us a little bit more about why, from your perspective, comedy is more difficult than a drama?
It's so specific. It almost has to be choreographed within an inch of its life in order to make the joke work, and then you run it over and over and over and over and over again until you have the timing down. And that's really the thing. It all comes down to timing, and what's the secret of comedy? Timing. It's because the way an audience kind of interacts with humor, the illusion is that it is effortless, but it absolutely is not. Take Saturday Night Live, for instance. They rehearse all week long, and sometimes they will rehearse bits to death and then get to the afternoon, Saturday afternoon, before they're ready to film it, and they go, it's not working, and they'll just completely cut it. Or they'll rewrite something on the fly. And I don't think people really realize, and I guess it makes sense when you think about it, but at first glance, you don't think about comedic actors as having to work hard. They just have to be funny, right? But it's really hard to be funny. I mean, have you ever had somebody go, okay, amuse me, tell me a joke, be funny, and you're like, I don't know what to do. And that's kind of one of the reasons why the comedy is so difficult. It takes a lot of practice, and probably even more so than a drama, because at least in a drama you can sort of feel your emotions and sort of go with it. It tends to be a bit more realistic in terms of what's happening, but humor, you can't really teach somebody how to be funny. They either are or they aren't.
I love that you said that a lot of comedy is choreographed, that the bits, the landing of the jokes have to be choreographed. So what happens when it goes awry?
Oh, disaster. You just crash and burn. Well, when we're in the rehearsal room, we just kind of go, okay, that didn't work. Let's try that again. Let's come up with something else. And sometimes, again, I've got a wonderful cast that they're all very funny and all have a very good sense of humor. So if I can't figure it out, usually somebody else in the room can, and we'll work it until we get it right. I don't know if it answered your question at all.
It did. No, it did. I'm interested to know, when you took the script, and the last time you and I sat like this, it was for All My Sons.
All My Sons.
And
Very different play.
Very, very different play. Was your process, when you took All My Sons and you started reading it and you came up with ideas and things, was it any different in that than it is in this? Do you take a different approach, is what I'm asking?
Yes, I think so. Our rehearsal period was a little shorter for this one than it was for All My Sons. All My Sons, we spent a lot of time really trying to figure out the backstory of these characters. And it's a play that's written with very deep, rich, realistic characters that have this whole inner life. And which is not to say that these characters in I Hate Hamlet are not rich, but they're rich in a different way. They're broad, and it's about the timing and the comedy of it, the humor of it, rather than where Joe Keller was 40 years before,
right? Sure.
And exactly what the timeline was of when they had the children and how long they were at the war, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was going on between the lines and underneath. And with comedy, even though you don't have the depth underneath the lines, you still you're skating on the surface. It's like surfing, and if you fall off the surfboard, you're going to wipe out. So you've got to find that balance going through. So it's almost like yin and yang, kind of approach to it.
So what's different in your approach? When you took All My Sons,
well, again, All My Sons, we spent a lot of time, practicing just listening and allowing and letting them, letting the characters kind of breathe on their own. And in this, we have to, it's like you have to go at it backwards. Instead of trying to approach the character first, you got to look at the joke, figure out how the humor works, and then work backwards from that rather than finding the character first and going forward.
Gotcha.
It's hard to describe, but it's something, yeah.
Is there more play in a rehearsal in a comedy versus doing a drama? And what I mean by that is there more,
Sometimes. I think it's really, that's one of those things that depends on your cast. I have worked on shows in the past that were comedies that were deadly serious because they were so complicated with how you put it all together. And then dark tragedies where people are just making jokes all the time and laughing. So I don't know that the mood is necessarily different because of the material you're working with, so much as the mix of the group that you've got. And really, I think it's something you sort of strive for anytime you're casting a show, is to find actors who you want to spend the next 4 or 5 weeks of your life with. And that they want to spend with you and with each other. Because when they don't get along, or when you don't get along with them, or vice versa, it's just a low-paying job at that point.
It just pays?
We need to talk.
Okay, fair enough. So let's bring it back to what we have around us. Tell me about the set.
Well, this is what it's going to be, Barrymore's apartment. The script sort of calls for this sort of Gothic, almost castle-like structure. He had designed it. He, in fact, the real Barrymore, in his real apartment, he called it the Alchemist's Corner. And it had this sort of medieval, very almost theatrical, and it looked like a stage set somewhat. Working with Andy Saunders on how we were going to make that work in the space. With Gothic, you've got these big archways that go up into the heavens, and it's a lot of height, which we don't really have here. So we decided to go more Tudor in style that would indicate kind of an Elizabethan type of sense to it, or a Shakespearean sense to it, without having to do exactly what was written in the script. So there's a grandness to it. And in the first act, when Andrew first shows up, and they've already brought a lot of his stuff in. The movers have kind of brought his things in. And he's got some modern furniture that sort of doesn't quite fit in with this. But as he starts to immerse himself in the whole Hamlet thing and learning Barrymore, learning about Barrymore and Barrymore's process and how to be bigger than life, and Barrymore says, I have the emotional reserves of 10 men. I'm not a ham. that kind of thing. That he starts to really invest in the space, and so the furniture changes. The lighting kind of changes a little bit. He's trying to live in a world that's very much like what he imagines Elsinore to be, and in fact, one of the other characters mentions that he's taken to wearing his costume around the house all the time. So it's a little bit like I was thinking of Richard Dreyfuss in The Goodbye Girl, when he's constantly doing his Richard III thing. And if you've seen the movie, it's kind of like that. And there is that broad, vast sense, and I think the set reflects that.
I always get very excited about the sets because we do absolutely transport from world to world.
Oh yeah.
For All My Sons, we had the backyard that you and Andy had come up with, and for this, now it's something different. And right before this, it was the French Riviera with some big wagons.
That's right. Yeah, you had that. It was such an intricate transforming thing going on.
Now we have a single interior, which is kind of amazing. You talked a lot about Barrymore, and so the play focuses sort of on Barrymore and is driven by Barrymore. What was your research like to get ready for that?
Louise Levin, one of our actresses in the show, was kind enough to bring me a DVD of a one-man show about Barrymore, and it had some really interesting insights into his life. Now, of course, it's a secondary resource.
Sure.
It's not going straight to the man. But I looked at a lot of videos of him performing. Most of the stuff that he did, in terms of what was filmed, was after he had played Hamlet and he had gone back to Hollywood. But you sort of get that sense of his elevated figure. There's this grandiose sense about him that transcends real life. And in fact, at one point he is pontificating about something or other, and Andrew says, "Who writes you?" But that's sort of the sense that this is a guy he's real. He's standing there in front of you, but he's always on. He's always playing a character, and so we try to capture that sense of John Barrymore. This is not a historically accurate John Barrymore. It's a sense of who this character is, and so I've been working with John Moore to marry some of the realities of who John Barrymore is with how he wants to interpret this type of character, and then it's a bit like, I think, when you play, I don't know, if you see a TV show and you have Shakespeare, there's the historical facts, but it's ultimately going to be the actor's interpretation of what that's going to be.
Did you help John come up with the characterization? Did you help him with some of his research?
I kind of guided him.
Gotcha.
Every actor has their own process, so I try to respect whatever the individual actor feels they need. And a lot of actors just enjoy doing it on their own, and if they need help, they'll ask. But I have, I showed him pieces of that DVD of the Barrymore stage play, and Christopher Plummer is playing Barrymore in that. And I also sort of, I think I guided him to watching and listening to Olivier and Gielgud and actors from that era who had a very distinct style. And I think that's something that that even though Barrymore is constantly accused in this play of being bigger than life and over the top and a little hammy, every generation of actors is seeking some element of truth. Now, how they interpret that is a little fluid. And David Garrick, who is one of the greatest actors of the 1800s, he was well known for his realism and his ability to realistically portray something on stage. However, we also know that from stage props and other documents that they have, that he had specially made a wig for when he played Macbeth, that when he saw the dagger before him, that he would pull the string and the hair would, sort of rise. So, I've never seen that in real life, but to that era, that was the height of realism. So what was considered to be realistic, truthful acting in the 1920s through 1940 something is going to be very different from 1992 when the play is set, and certainly 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, and so on in this era now.
Are there challenges to a play being set in 1992?
Well, at first, I was just going to cut a corner and say, because they talk about talking in the telephones and things, so it's like, well, just use cell phones. And then I started thinking about it, and I went, that doesn't make sense, because Lillian is Andrew's agent, and it's revealed that she had had a fling with Barrymore. So if we said it in 2016, she would be quite wizened indeed.
So yes,
she'd be over 100 years old. So
there are challenges, of course.
But it's so funny that when you think about 1992, that was over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember 1992.
I remember 1992 as well.
And so I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And then some of the technology and things they're referring to, and I kind of went, how did we live like that? That's like the Dark Ages. the intercom system where they're buzzing people in, and then there's a whole like handset involved. And
That's right.
I can't remember the last time I actually saw a telephone in someone's home that you picked up and dialed with a landline.
Yeah, 92 is not quite the rotary, but it is.
Well, it's funny, Gabe, who was born in '88, made the comment the other night. He goes, "So this is a phone from '92, so it's like one of these things, right?" I was like, "We had buttons back then, whippersnapper." He goes, "Well, I don't know. I was like 3." I was like, "I know."
You mentioned that the character is here to play Hamlet in Shakespeare in the Park. Have you seen any of Shakespeare in the Park? Have you seen that in person?
In person, no. I've seen videos of it. There's a fine production of Lear with James Earl Jones playing King Lear, which is filmed Shakespeare in the Park. And I've read some of Joe Papp's stuff and all of his impresario sense that he was using to get this project off the ground and make it free and accessible to people. And but no, I've never actually seen it live.
Well, I can tell you it is free, but you have to give up an entire day to get the free seat because you must be there early.
Yes.
Be there for a long time, but
and it's first come first serve too. It's not like you buy.
No, it's first come first serve. Absolutely. The play is about Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any experience in productions of Hamlet?
A little bit. I played Hamlet at Theatre Memphis. Oh God, what was it? 2003.
Back when the rotary dials were
back when we were using tin cups and strings, calling the operator. Hello. Yeah, I played Hamlet. I was 30 at the time, and. I don't think I was smart enough to be as afraid as I probably should have been when I started playing the part. I actually have it on video, and when we were ramping up to this, I was like, well, I'll take a look at that. I was like, oh my God, that's awful. And I immediately ripped it out of the DVD player and threw it across the room. But it's like Barrymore says in the play, it's a role that's so complicated, so complex, so vast that any attempt is just that. It's an attempt. No one man can fully encompass what this role involves and what this play involves. It's so layered and so complicated that it's kind of like reading Ulysses or a Pynchon novel or something like that. It's just so convoluted that you almost need footnotes to the footnotes to the footnotes to understand exactly what's going on psychologically in this guy's head. And he's right. It's a little bit of an actor's Everest, and some people get closer to the peak than others. And I don't think I quite got to the peak, but I tried. Darn it.
In the production that you played Hamlet, what is something what's a piece that you really remember that was a favorite part of yours to play night after night? Because there's always one, right? There's always something that as an actor you say, I just fall in love with that moment.
To be or not to be, it was always, that's the one everyone's supposed to be afraid of, but that was the one that I think and I think because that was the first thing I learned. And so I spent the most time, I'd spent years with it before I'd even gotten cast in the part, before I'd even auditioned. I'd known that since I was a kid. And so getting to finally perform it was very exciting. I do remember one night, Rhodes was doing Hamlet roughly the same time. And they had closed a few weeks before we opened. And Kyle Hatley had been playing Hamlet, and they brought their whole group to come and see it. And it was in the next stage, so the audience is in your lap. And I got to the To Be or Not To Be speech, and I looked up, and we made eye contact, and I did the whole thing. And it was just this surreal moment where I had just seen him do this exact same thing 2 weeks before. And it's hard to describe, what that sort of magic moment when you get these two actors who are, even though he's in the audience, we were almost doing a scene together. And it's just such a rare experience to have that.
That's a really great story. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's kind of incredible. All right, I'm going to ask you the famous questions.
Hit me.
You ready?
I'll try and get them right this time.
Okay, that's good, because we got them way wrong last time. So tell me, John, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word. I don't even remember what I said last
I
time.
don't remember either. So.
But it probably was the same thing. It's sanguinary.
That was exactly what it was.
Was it? Yeah.
It has to have been, because there was no one else
In the world who would say
given
that. There's just something about the liquid sense
correct.
of that word that it's exactly what,
I do remember that now. Thank you. I've been to therapy to get rid of that, but it's all coming back to me.
And yes, you're welcome. It's in the build of my parents.
So what is your least favorite word?
Goodness. Yeah. I'm trying to not say the same thing I said last time, which I believe was I can't. It was actually 2 words.
It may have been it, but I think it was a little more intelligent than that.
You're giving me way too much credit.
Well,
My least favorite word, it's variations in the same theme. It's won't, can't, refuse. In fact, I teach high school, and I had a student today. We just finished reading The Hobbit, and they had a project in which they were going to do a presentation of one of the characters, and characterization. They had to draw a picture of. I had a series of characters I could choose from, and she's like, I can't draw. Like, what do you mean you can't draw? Like, I'm not looking for Picasso. I just want you to express yourself. I think that's one of the can't and won't are so restrictive and powerful that we place on ourselves. If you go into a classroom full of kindergartners or first graders, you say, okay, how many of you are artists? They almost all raise their hand.
Right.
And if you go along the grades and keep asking them that, fewer and fewer hands until you get to high school, and then maybe 1 or 2 that are really into it and take art, they'll raise their hand. Everyone else is like, no, I don't do that, man. And it's that, and I think it's kind of sad. I want, I was trying to encourage her to take a risk. Just let it be. What's the worst that happens? I'm not grading you on how good it is. I just want you to do the thing. And so hopefully that got through.
did she draw?
She started.
Good. Okay.
So that's all,
You got to give us
we
a
got the
win.
horse to the water. We'll just see what happens after that.
Okay, you ready?
Hit me.
What turns you on?
What turns me on? Oh, God. Strangely enough, more so than actually performing, which I love, don't get me wrong, but rehearsing. I love rehearsing. I love being in the rehearsal room. I love discovering things with the actors and figuring stuff out. Just like anybody, we get tired sometimes. You got a rough day and you got to go to rehearsal. It's like, oh, I have no ideas. What am I going to do? And sometimes that happens, but inevitably, by the time I've finished the rehearsal, I end up feeling more revitalized. I feel like we've got a group of people together and we're solving a puzzle and we're doing it as a group, and that's what just gets me jazzed, and probably the main reason why I keep involved in theater is it just scratches that itch.
Yeah, no one understands that a rehearsal is an escape room.
Oh yeah.
It's 100% an
absolutely.
escape room. You don't get to leave until you solve it.
Right.
So what turns you off?
Ignorance, willful ignorance specifically. When someone just digs their heels in and roots in, just being obstinate about an idea that may have been refuted or not open to another suggestion. You don't necessarily have to agree with it, but stay open to someone else's possibility. But just refusing to learn the facts about something, and being unwilling to say, I don't know, or I was wrong. That's one of the hardest things for anyone to say, and that's just, willful ignorance is probably my biggest pet peeve.
What sound do you love?
Now, this one has not changed. It's the sound of my daughter's laughter. She's getting older now. She's 11, and she turns 12 this December. But the thing that's consistent, has been consistent all through her life, is that she's always laughed and loved to laugh, and we laugh together, and it's just one of those sounds that is so unique and just kind of hits me in the right way. That every parent knows. The
Right.
sound of their own children laughing is just it's music.
Right. So what sound do you hate?
Traffic. The sound of traffic. That may be because I was in a lot of traffic on the way here from rehearsal.
All of us were.
Oh yeah.
Tonight.
The sound of traffic, the sound of construction. Especially when you're driving down I-40 and you get to that 240 I-40 and there's just construction and people honking and everyone's angry and then the traffic and it stresses me out.
Yeah.
It's the worst 2.5 minutes of my day cutting to that area.
What profession would you like to attempt?
I've been very fortunate in that acting, I was able to make a living as an actor for a long time, and then now kind of my second phase has been teaching, and I've really enjoyed that. So I've kind of gotten to do the two things I really wanted to do, but I think when I was a kid, if you asked me, I would have said astronaut. I want to go to space. I was at the Star Wars, Star Trek era when I was expecting robots and laser beams and things, which is totally not what it was at all. But and for a while there, I wanted to be a geneticist. I got really interested in genetics and that aspect of biology, and then I found theater, and that kind of went away.
So in other words, now you'd like to be a private eye, right?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Still,
Yeah, professional code cracker, or,
a wind talker.
right?
That's what you would like
a
to
wind
do.
talker. That's exactly it.
Let's go
I
with
have
that
no
one.
qualifications for that whatsoever, but I absolutely I would like to be a wind talker.
That'd be great. I can see that.
Yeah.
You've got a future in that. So what profession would you not like to do? Roadside construction?
I don't know, man. They're not in the traffic, so they're just causing it.
A cabbie?
What would I not like to do? If you ever watch that, I don't even think the show's on anymore, but that Dirty Jobs show that Mike Rowe did, where it's, I'm watching this going, people actually have to do that. That's awful. I wouldn't want to clean septic tanks. I don't think that would be something that would be very fun. I'm sure it's very fulfilling to the people that do that sort of thing, but it just...
It fills their pockets.
It fills a lot of things, I think.
I think you're right. It's their job to unfill.
Right, indeed. I think the filling aspect may be the part that's less appealing to me.
That's right. Well, probably to them too, to be fair.
Touche.
John, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you approach the pearly gates?
I'm proud of what you've done. You did well. Whatever that means, whatever well is, you lived your life to the fullest, and you had a great time doing it, and you've made a difference, whether it's to one person or many people or just to yourself. I think that's what I would like at the end of my life, to be able to say, no regrets. I did what I wanted to do and did it the best I could.
It's a great answer. It's a good answer. Why don't you shoot into that camera right there, give the last pitch for people to come out and see I Hate Hamlet.
Come out and see I Hate Hamlet. It's hilarious. Like I said earlier in the interview here, that if you ever wanted to be in a live studio audience and see what it would be like in a sitcom, this is the show. This is your chance. So come out and see it.
You can get your tickets by calling our box office at 453-7447. And we thank you for joining us in this final Inside GCT for the 44th season of the Germantown Community Theatre.